few times. Or a few minutes here. So welcome to Glitch Fantasy 6. Final Glitch 6. Final Fantasy 6, the glitching? I don't know, whatever. Ooh, as I keep knocking this thing off the desk. This is not the most stable setup here. Hang on, let me try and move this cable around here. That might help a bit. There we go. Maybe that'll help. Put this here, put this here. Okay, on to Albrook. So I haven't talked about Albrook yet. Albrook's an interesting circumstance. I don't know, right? All it takes is a screen transition to fix it. In fact, here's the funny thing here. I'll save, okay, and then load. Oh, it didn't do it. Weird. It was doing it earlier, even in a non-overworld situation. It's been doing it every time I loaded, except for right now when I just loaded it. Whatever. Albrook is an interesting circumstance because this is actually technically supposed to be our first look at an Imperial occupied area, and yet this is also the area that is most accustomed to that occupation. Now note, okay, I was wondering this earlier, and the looking at this place confirms it. This place does have signs of damage to it. You know, chunks of the ceilings are gone, chunks of the walls are gone. So this does fully verify what I was referencing earlier and wasn't 100% sure of. In other words, this place has been conquered and was not originally part of Vector. But it is also very clear Albrook was the first nation that they conquered, and that makes sense. It's the port nation, and it's overall the largest area, so it always has struck me as the wealthiest area, and therefore is the place they would have attacked first. So okay, these two dialogues don't actually make much sense in context, so I'm just going to explain it for you, because again, GBA translation. The merchants have to bribe the soldiers to continue to function here in order to keep, doing their business and whatnot. Again, showing some of the darker aspects of the Imperial occupation. Now, some of the things these guys say actually changes, or rather, I should say, has already changed because of the fact that we're at this point in the story. They say a few different things earlier. Most of the earlier things they say is about how things on this continent have trace amounts of magic in them due to the proximity to the gate. They don't actually say it's proximity to the gate, but that's what's actually causing it. There is a theory that's been out there that if we didn't end up in the course of FF6 locking down the gate and fully and 100% removing magic from the world, that what might have happened is that the entire world would have slowly and gradually become magic again. You know what I mean? That the magic that seeped out would have slowly come out until it got to the point where there basically is no separation of magic to non-magic. Instead, the whole world would have just been a magical world again. And it has been theorized that if that happened, that would have been a disastrous thing, just like it was back in the world of Magi. Except if it had reached that point, it is arguable that there would have been no sealing magic away. Instead, it would have been just magic is now a part of the world. Now, whether or not that is a good or a bad thing is, of course, going to depend on your personal opinion on the matter. Excuse me. But it is worth noting that FF6, as I've said before, God, that fan. FF6 is one of those settings where the game definitively and functionally ends in a way that you can't really do in FF6 too. It's not. There's nothing there. The game has ended so succinctly that any new story would be so completely separate from FF6 that it might as well not even be happening in the same setting, because the setting was completely changed by FF6's ending too, right? That's why I say an FF6 prequel, that would have worked. But anyways, I'm getting off track. So the other thing, this area actually had a bunch of soldiers, and they were hooting and catcalling at a bunch of dancers who were up there going, woo! Woo, we're totally dancers, and flirting with the soldiers and all that stuff. There's an implication in the way these are talked about with regards to the characters that some of the women here were genuinely flirtatious with some of the soldiers, and some of them were really resentful of the fact that they had to flirt with these, well, pigs. which one is well, yeah, whatever. That's all I got to say about that. But it does, and again, several of the people here mentioned the fact that this area was the first place conquered. It has been under occupation longer than anywhere else in the world. You know, blah 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 blah, right? No, Crisis Core actually happens before FF7. Remember, Psychotic? So it's a prequel. Dirge of Cerberus, that's the one that happened after. Think about that for a minute. Anyways, so I don't have much else to say about Albrook. So that's all I got here. It's time for some drama. Seriously though, it is easy to kind of just laugh and shake my head at some of the drama, but it is worth noting that this is an 18-year-old girl and a 23-year-old guy. So I mean, in other words, two youngins, in other words, who are both still trying to figure out their emotions and romances. So it kind of makes sense. So yeah, there's Celis, who acts like she's never met us for some reason, and Shadow. This is also possibly the first time we've met Shadow, depending on how you do things. This is also the last possible point in time at which you could have met Shadow. It is impossible to avoid this one. So every other time prior to this, I talked about this, every other time prior to this you could avoid Shadow. There is no avoiding Shadow here. I mention this because it's significant, because it makes Shadow a mandatory party member just like everyone else, unlike an optional party member. Umaro and Gogo are truly the only optional party members. Everyone else, you have to, at some point or another, get them in the party unless you glitch the game out. And even glitching the game out only allows you to skip a couple, like Celis, for example. By the way, it is possible to be up until this point in time and still have Celis be Kutan. It is not until the World of Ruin that the game becomes unplayable as a result of that glitch. I'm not even 100% sure if it's impossible to beat the game with the Kutan glitch. I'm just assuming it because the one and only time it's ever been tried that I'm aware of, the game just completely self-destructed when you got to the World of Ruin. But anyways. So yeah, Celis is just like, well, can't take this. Leaves. Oh, good. Shadow has not been hired to kill us. That's good to know. Now, I've had some people ask what the hell's going on with this scene. Yes, Psychotic, that's the one we're referring to. In other words, why is it that Celis is so weirded out by this? The English translation didn't quite get across what was happening in the Magitech research facility as accurately as it could. The idea here was that there's an in-character and an out-of-character explanation. The in-character explanation is that for a moment, Locke, not even the rest of them, just Locke, doubted Celis. Doubted her sincerity, doubted her truth, doubted whether or not she ever actually cared about the returners, and to be perfectly blunt, doubted whether or not she actually cared about him. It's very clear throughout the game that Locke and Celis have been getting closer to each other. Whether that's romantic or not is irrelevant, if I could be so bold. The entire idea is that they have been growing emotionally attached to each other. Friends, comrades, the label doesn't matter. And so, at that moment, there was a chink in that. For the first time, that emotional connection was challenged, and Locke doubted her. And there is no denying the fact that in that scene, Locke demonstrated that doubt, and Celis was crushed by that, because Celis wasn't being insincere. There was no reason for that doubt. It was just a trick on behalf of Kefka, right? And so that hurt Celis. So now Celis has, for the first time in her life, had someone she can emotionally connect to. That would be Locke. You could argue that she could have connected with Terra, we talked about that, or Sid, we talked about that. But this is the first time she's had someone, that was actually a person. That wasn't, the person who was raising her, or the person who was experimenting on her, or the person who was in her similar circumstance. This was just a human being she could connect with, and that person doubted her. That person was, basically wasn't entirely certain if he trusted her. Now, I know that sounds silly, but try to remember the first time you were ever emotionally hurt in your life. It probably happened when you were a teenager. It might have happened even before that. I'm not going to go into my own examples because I've learned to stop talking about that sort of stuff on the stream. But like, if you were to go back to, say, for example, when you were this is a purely fictional example. Let's say you were about 4 years old, 5 years old, seven. We'll go with 7. You're 7 years old, and up until that point in your life, you haven't really had to deal with anything. And then your parents divorce, and there's always that question. And I know this is a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. Because it's always in the mind of the child: is this my fault? Did I help cause this? Did I push mommy and daddy away? And so you're emotionally wounded. And when that first time you're wounded, you don't really know how to deal with it, do you? You kind of, and everyone reacts to it differently because people are people. But you don't know how to deal with that exactly. So again, remember, this is the first time Celis has dealt with it. She may be 18 in terms of physical age, but her emotional maturity just is not there. She's never had a chance to be emotionally mature. She will get her chance in the future when she is forced into a literal apocalyptic scenario, but as of now, she's just a kid who has been hurt by someone. Locke, meanwhile, we've talked about Locke. He's damaged. He watched someone he loved and cared about get injured to the point where she literally didn't recognize him anymore. And when he finally decided to leave for her own good, because he loved her enough to leave her, he found out that she died in his absence. So Locke has tremendous difficulty becoming attached to someone, and also, of course, the clear and significant physical, or not, excuse me, physical, but the emotional need to take care of people in the future, which is how he latched on to both Terra and Celis to begin with. I'm just mentioning this because this is not just some bad teenage drama. It is good teenage drama. This is teenage drama, don't mistake. But it's understandable. You with me? That is my defense of this scene and the scenes that go on here. This is why Celis just can't even bring herself to say anything. She has no idea how to deal with this. And Locke, in this cutscene, I kind of skipped through the dialogue, but he actually freely admits to her that he doubted her, confirming in her mind that wound, that difficulty, that ugh. And she doesn't know how to deal with it, so she's just going back to business as usual, as if she's never met these people before and blah, blah, blah. But the problem, of course, being the fact that now Locke has reached out to her. Locke has put himself out there to try and, to try and communicate, to try and react with her or touch with her. And she rejected him, which is why in the next time she is going to make an overture to him to try and talk to him, and he is going to shun her in return. Because now he's hurt. All of this probably sounds like textbook. I mean, this sounds like just like any relationship ever, doesn't it? He gets hurt because the two people have a misunderstanding. And in many times in real life, it is just a misunderstanding. It's not one person being a terrible person and the other person being a saint. There's just a misunderstanding between two people who are people. One of them gets hurt and reacts to that, which causes the other one to get hurt and reacts to that. And the key to a good relationship is figuring out how to stop that domino from continuing to fall. Because otherwise that's just going to keep escalating until you break up. And that's what happens in most breakups I've seen. That kind of thing never just kind of builds and builds and builds as the two sides never really figure out a way to pull back on that until, a month or a year or whatever down the future, it finally hits a point where that back and forth hurting between the two of them gets to the point where one of them is just sick of it and then they break up. Anyways. So. What we have now, this is where General Leo becomes a full-fledged character. Before, he was basically a cliche with honestly no other real nuance to him. The noble demon. We talked about this all the way back at the Imperial camp outside of Doma. But here we find out that there's a little bit more to him because he and Terra have this great interaction here. Where Terra admits that she has no idea how to deal with any of these things. You know, I've had all these horrible things happening to me, and here I am confronting with the enemy, as if this is wrong, yet she herself doesn't understand why it's wrong, or if it's wrong. And then Leo's response is, people are people, not all of us are like Kefka. She's like, what do you mean by that? And this is when Leo admits to his human flaws. I knew you were being used as a biological weapon, and because I didn't do anything about it, I'm no different than Kafka. Leo admits that he lacked the courage or fortitude or moral strength and conviction or whatever to stand up and try to do something to help Terra when she actually needed it. He did the safe thing. He kept following orders. He shunted responsibility off to someone else. That human flavor that is added to him really helps flesh General Leo out as a character, and in my opinion is why so many of us like General Leo. Not just because he's the noble demon, which is a popular style of character to begin with, but because of what he did right there. Can you guys hear me, by the way? It always weirds me out when chat is just silent or talking about unrelated things. I feel like I'm talking to my monitor, you know? Is anyone there? By the way, this is another thing some people have misunderstood, because when people say the word love, the most common, okay, I'm here. The most common definition, the most common thing that most people think when they hear the word love is romantic love. However, instead of that actually being, it is very clear, especially in the original, dialogue, that Terra is not referring to romantic love. She is referring to what is usually referred to as agapeo, or a form of, or excuse me, not agapeo, phileo, which is basically familial love. In other words, she wants to understand what it's like to be loved by someone else, to have that emotional human connection to someone else, of a decidedly and distinctly non-romantic manner. I mention this because this completely changes the tone of this conversation. General Leo, who's in his 40s, talking to this 18-year-old about how, don't worry, I understand what it's like, and someday you'll know love, etc., makes more sense when you approach it as him as being more of a father figure, explaining to a young woman that someday she will know what it's like to have a family, as opposed to a lover. It changes the tone significantly. I also agree with what Baronessa says, by the way, that I have no doubt that Leo was probably had a great deal of admiration for Celis, who, as Baronessa just pointed out, had the courage to do what he didn't. And again, that now he is trying to make up for it. And indeed, from basically now until, spoiler alert, his death, he will be striving and working very hard to make up for the fact that he did not have the courage to say no, and that will actually be the direct cause of his death. This is an awesome scene. I mean, this whole scene has been awesome anyways. The fleshing out of General Leo, the understanding of Terra as a character. Keep in mind, this is one of the first times Terra has really opened herself up to anyone. Early on, she was a little more open because she was trying to figure out who and what she was. But then if you pay attention, Terra just kind of clammed up right about the time of Act 2, about the beginning of Season 2, and throughout all of Season 2. And this is the first time she opens up to someone. And of course, she opens up to Leo, of all people, and to Shadow. She opens up to a general of the enemy, and freaking Shadow, who, I'm just going to quote him here, has killed his own emotions. The irony, though, is it really demonstrates just how desperate Terra is feeling about this concept, about how she doesn't feel familial or friendship love, about how she doesn't understand this feeling or this concept, and it's bothering her. She sees it in others. She sees it in Edgar and Locke. She sees it in Edgar and Sabin. She probably sees it in Locke and Celis to some extent or another. She sees it in the people they're talking to, and the families, and the children, and all that stuff. She has seen this love thing, and she feels none of it. And so she is so desperate to talk about it that when she finally opens up to Leo, Shadow could have been just a random NPC who walked out. And she is, at this point, she wants so much to just talk about this matter that she just latches on. She's like, Shadow, even though it's freaking Shadow. But then he responds, and I love this. I can't help you. This is one of the better Woolsey translations in the whole game. I can't help you. You must look within for answers. And then, Terra. In this world, there are many like me who have killed their emotions. Don't forget that. And yeah, I agree. Absolutely, Terra is in a very similar situation to Kefka with the opposed parallel going on. And I absolutely think that's on purpose, by the way. I absolutely think that's on purpose, because Terra, by the end of the game, has discovered that connection, that human connection, and it has fulfilled her purpose in living. Kefka has failed at finding that connection, and he tries, by the way. He does try. He fails at finding that connection, and therefore is so opposed to the very concept of living that not only does he not destroy the world, he lets himself die. He lets himself be killed. I'm sorry, Kefka is a tragic character. As much of a vicious, bastard, evil, horrible thing that he is a tragic character. And Locke gets seasick. This is a little bit of a mood whiplash, but I'm okay with it because, for the same reason I'm okay with basically all the other mood whiplashes that they have in this game. The juxtaposition, you know. It's like, oh god, super serious, incredible character moment, super amazing stuff about Terra, about Celes, about Leo, about Kefka, about Shadow, and then Locke gets seasick and pukes over the side of the ship. If this had dragged on, this wouldn't be funny. But it's just a short thing. It's just like, ugh, and then it's over. So it's a short scene, so it works. I agree, by the way, Formosan. Terra is such a freaking amazing character. Absolutely love this character. Alright, so... So this is when Celes decides to make an overture to Locke. Again, remember, everything I just talked about, you know, he's hurt, she's hurt, now she's hurt, so she's trying to get back. But he's hurt, so he's not willing to listen. So, yeah. I love the music they play for it, too. I'll stop, but it's it's not exactly a good song, but it suits the scenes it's played in beautifully, doesn't it? Alright, we're not even going to equip Shadow. He's kind of purposeless. I mean, I'm sorry, but Shadow is really purposeless here. Except for one thing, which doesn't matter. His equipment doesn't really matter for this, so we're just going to do this. There we go. Shadow is, yeah. Shadow was the first ninja-type character who pretty much abused throw in my gameplay of everything ever. There have been games after this where I have had a character where throw is like their only purpose in existing. But before this, most of the characters who had throw, I didn't use it that much because I didn't want to waste the items, for lack of a better way to put it, in throwing them. So, yeah. Save. Glitch fest! Sorry, I had to do it one more time. I should stop doing that. I'd really hate to actually crash my game. So this time, people are talking a little bit more. Remember, if we came here earlier in the airship, they're just like... This time they say a little bit more, and I mean just a little bit. It's more like, you know, we know nothing, we're useless, don't pay attention to me. A lot of people I know didn't know there's several cutscenes you can get in Thamasa. They just go straight for Strago's house. I'm going to showcase all of them here. Throw is damn strong in FF6. In fact, throw is so strong in 6 that for the speedrun category of no glitches, you know, no Joker Doom, no X Zone and Doom, that kind of a thing, it's pretty much the most used thing for all of the major bosses in Kefka's Tower. Welcome, welcome. Magic? What is this magic? Never even heard of that. So strangeness. Huh? What was this? This is my favorite of the scenes. I should have done this one last. Mama, it hurts. Oh, all right. Cure. Um. Medicine. Where's my cure medicine? Mama, Mama, please cast cure on me. I love that. So here's the house that will be on fire in a little bit. You might be wondering, well, why is this house on fire? Well, fire! Fire! Yeah! So, yeah. Oh, these are slightly different. What these people are is these are the descendants of Magitech Knights. Oh god, Zenonage is so overpowered at 5. I'm just going to do quad 9 damage to you and there's nothing you can do about it. No defenses, no resistances, just here, take 4 digits of 9 damage. These are the people who, once upon a time, were like us. You know, we use Magicite, right? We equip the Magicite, and it imbues part of the soul of the Esper into us, which teaches us how to use the spells that Esper knows, right? Makes sense? So we learn some of that magic into us, and again, Magicite teaches us. We aren't teaching the materia, like the FF7 system, which is the exact opposite. So with that magic now imbued into our souls, if we were to have children, those children would have some innate magic in them, and so with their children, and so with their children, etc. It is debatable how much that fades. It is clear it fades at least a little bit, but the fact that people of this era still know magic of at least a strong enough effect to be able to cast, you know, level 1 or 2 spells, it means that even though it fades, it only fades a little bit. You follow where I'm going with that? So these people are all descendants of those original Mage Knights from, you know, forever ago, and still have magic imbued in them. That's also how Strago can do his unique form of magic, which we'll talk about in a minute, and how Realm can do her unique form of magic, which we'll talk about in a minute. As an aside, this is probably one of my favorite town squares ever. It's funny because it's actually really the only town square in FF6, and it's only here because there is a huge cutscene that's going to be happening here in a little bit, and so they needed all this space to work with. I already did that. There is one thing I'm going to do while I'm here. Do I have the money for that? Yeah, I think I do. Nope, wrong place. It was in the item shop. Or maybe it's not. I actually don't remember what it is. I don't even have my notes on me. That category I mentioned, the no glitch, you know, speedrun, these rods, it relies a lot on rods. Rods actually bypass some of the rules of magic in a weird way. If you don't know what I mean by that, let me put it to you this way. When you cast, say, you know, Bolt 2, it goes through a whole formula to determine the damage of that, which is based on your magic power and whatnot. When you use a rod, it bypasses 1 or 2, I forget, of the steps in that formula, which basically means you're doing the max amount of damage you can do with Bolt 2. So breaking a rod tends to do way more damage than actually casting the spell, and that makes sense. You're blowing 3,000 gold every time you're casting the spell. So I like that. It makes sense that it would be better. But yeah, that strategy involves a lot of rod usage because it'll just destroy enemies. Hey, little Billy. And yes, Baronessa, we're getting close to the Season 3 finale here. Not there yet, though. Not there yet. Let's go meet Strago. We have a few things to talk about with him. Oh! I want to talk about one other thing here, okay? Really quick. Well, I think I'll save that for later. Never mind. I'll save that for later. Also, where's my hug, Bregvin? I need hugs, especially right now. Yeah, you gotta use a lot of rods, man. Like 8, 9, I don't know. Strago. What you want with me? I like Strago. He is a very typical type of character in the Final Fantasy series. Basically the older guy who doesn't act like it, who's got a lot of energy and a lot of drive and a lot of, gumption, and he just doesn't take flack from anyone, etc., etc. Hey, Leander. So, a good example of this type of character is Cid from Final Fantasy IV, to name a direct example, or Galuf from Final Fantasy V, right? So Strago is that same type of character, and it's one of the reasons I've always liked Strago as a character. I've heard several different ways to pronounce his name too: Strago, Strega, Stragu. I've heard before. I kid you not. I call him Strago. What do you want from me? His last name is Magus. uh, Strago. It's funny because Strago himself is an ex-adventurer. Damn it, Bragwin. I'll take your pizza then. Yeah, kind of like if Yuffie would got old. Strago and Galuf both share one similar trait in the fact that they were adventurers, career adventurers basically, who got old. And so I often think that several of the more adventurous characters in the FF series would be a similar type of character if, another 20 years were added to their life. Like Locke, for example, in his 40s or 50s, might be that same type of character. Same thing for a few other kind of people. So yeah, he's like, Strago is also a terrible liar. It has been argued that every now and again they probably get visitors. I agree with that mentality. It makes a lot of sense in a world this vast and with as many forms of transportation as they have. And they're probably not used to those visitors specifically asking about magic. I mention this because they are really, really bad at hiding the fact that they have magic. It's so obvious that they have magic here. And they're really bad liars about it. So it's more likely that they're not used to someone walking up and saying, hey, we're here to talk about espers and magic. And they're just like, oh, I've never heard of espers or magic. What's magic? Let's talk about Realm. Realm is Shadow's daughter. Spoiler alert. Question. Do you think Shadow, upon seeing her, realized who she was right here? Anyone? Any question? Anyone think that? It's a debatable thing, because remember, Shadow left when she was younger than she is now, years ago. So he might not actually recognize her. But at the same time, it's very likely that he does recognize her very, very quickly. Like, I mean, not upon seeing her, but the moment he mentions her name. That's my opinion. Yeah, I know, okay. That's my opinion. I think that Shadow recognizes her the moment she says her name. It would be like, well, I don't want to give away the name of my daughter. We'll pretend my daughter's name is Barbarella. So it would be like if I was to meet someone who, I haven't seen in years, and just walking around, all of a sudden she's like, and someone's like, hey, Barbarella, and that would just be like, huh? Because at that moment I would realize, yeah. And as Leander points out, there is literally no questioning that Shadow recognizes Strago. I mean, it's impossible for him not to. Strago's been around here since before Shadow was born. So, Shadow was definitely here before. So yeah, in my opinion, he might not have recognized it instantly, but he definitely put the dots together very quickly. And as Kay points out, Interceptor figures out that that's Realm, his daughter, instantly, which is another reason why Interceptor is awesome. We'll talk a little bit more about the two of these characters and their magical things, whatnot. Realm is someone who is technically a C-list character. She does not have a lot of characterization to her, and that sucks because I think they could have done more with her as a character. I've often felt, however, that Realm is one of the very few young, precocious character types, in that general categorization of character, that they actually did relatively well. Well, that's easy to explain, Smash. Remember, Realm's mother was the one who was the ex-Magitech Knight. Shadow came from outside. Shadow came from another place entirely, and was not one of the descendants of the Magitech Knights. So that's also probably why Realm only knows a very specific type of magic, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Realm, I feel, is one of those characters that doesn't actually irritate me. She's not the only one. Yuffie doesn't irritate me, for example. But some other ones that I could mention, quite a few actually, do irritate me a wee bit across the FF series. I have heard many of my various uh, viewers don't really care for example, Vanille over in FF13, or I'm trying to think of another good example of this, Aiko in FF9. You know, that kind of precocious, kooky, whatever you want to call it, young character is a thing they've been doing for some time in the FF series. What do you guys think? Does Realm bother you? Does Realm not bother you? I really just wish she had more character moments. Basically, she has this scene and the scene in the mountain, and then the couple of scenes in World of Ruin, and that's kind of it. And notice how Interceptor follows her without her saying, you know, follow or come here, Interceptor. Interceptor just automatically goes with her. I like Riku too, although as I've said before, and as I talked about during the FF10 marathon, she has a lot more depth to her than most people tend to look at. She's one of the only Albed who are actually willing to challenge their doctrine, just as the, or not Albed, one of the machine people. Is that the Albed? Shoot, I can't actually remember their name. Whatever, moving on. Afraid of the sketch glitch. I don't blame you on that one for Texan. Nowadays, I actually know. I was the exact same. I was the exact same way. I was the exact same way about sketch glitch until I finally understood how the sketch glitch actually worked, which was years and years and years and years later. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, I know how to bypass that now. Yes, Realm has the highest natural magic stat in the entire game. If you don't do any Esper manipulation or whatever, she will be through the roof as a mage. It's one of the reasons Realm is usually one of my primary mages. Because, I mean, you get her, and it is possible with Realm and some stat manipulation to get her to a situation where even when she does an AoE spell, which reduces the damage of it, she'll still hit quad 9s, which takes a lot of magic power to actually pull that off. You can min-max the crap out of Realm. So, notice that now we are known in town. His price goes from 1,500 Geonite to 1. This is the best inn in the game, by the way. In the world of Ruin, whenever I'm running around, I pretty much always come here to save, and to heal, because it's 1 frickin' G. And I'm a cheap bastard. Although in my defense, I usually have to spend a ludicrous amount of gold in the world of Ruin, because I like to buy a little bit of everything, especially when I'm doing a 100% run, where I have to buy a little bit of everything. Now, here's an interesting thought point. Strago, you know, there's a fire at the house. Realm is stuck in the house because she was hanging out, probably staying overnight at a friend's house, right? That's very normal. Kids going over to do an overnight, right? Strago comes to us for help. Why is that? Now, I personally think it's actually a really simple explanation. Remember, Strago is an ex-adventurer himself. He's someone who has gone out there and who has fought enemies, fought monsters, been out in the field, been out in the wilds. He knows what it's like. I think he saw Locke, especially Locke, but also Terra and Shadow, and immediately pegged them as adventurers. And again, most especially Locke. And so when he sees a crisis situation, his first thoughts are not going to be his villagers, who are more used to tending the fields than anything else. His first thoughts are going to be the heavily armed individuals who are staying at the inn. So I think that's why he comes straight here, because Strago does have a brain, and right now he gives a lot more of a damn about Realm than, to be blunt, anything else. So calling in these total strangers to hope that they can help, yeah, of course he's going to do that. And notice that both Terra and Locke don't hesitate even a second to help. Shadow just tosses fitfully in his sleep. Until they're gone. Sorry, but I don't buy that Shadow's emotions are completely dead either. Fire! Um, this is a nice graphical effect. The fact that everyone's kind of tinted red is also pretty cool. This dungeon always is extremely atmospheric for me. No, actually, Lex, I've always assumed that what he's casting is not ice. I've always assumed he's casting aqua breath. I mean, think about it. In fact, if they ever did the full proper 3D remake, etc., blah blah blah, I would imagine that if they ever during this cutscene, they would actually show him casting aqua lung or aqua breath, whatever it's called in this one, all over the house. Flames be gone. Yeah, I know, that means everyone else is casting it too, but shrug. That's also true. They do have the rods he could be breaking. And we do know rods are a thing here. I mean, there's tons of fire rods in the house. So he could just be breaking a rod, too. We don't know. And yeah, I agree with what Baronessa just said. Shadow is definitely a man of action. It's probably very comfortable after a life of pain and suffering, of losing your loved ones and friends, to just kind of be at the point where you don't have to think about any of that. You just do whatever you're ordered to do, whatever you're hired to do, and you keep living your life. None of that actually matters, right? Nothing else actually matters. Imagine something showing up that actually makes you care again for the first time. That's probably very uncomfortable for Shadow, and one of the reasons why I have no doubt he denies so stringently that he cares in this situation, which he does twice, once already and once in a future scene. Also, this is another of those repetition amusing me things. I like the idea of Strago just being like, whoa, whoa, like spinning around back and forth between Terra and Locke. Whoa, whoa, yeah. Anyways. Strago's not exactly a bad character himself to be turned into a mage type, but nowhere near as good as Realm in terms of sheer stats. We will, however, give him some firepower for this run, because the only way he's going to be able to contribute is this. Aqua Rake is apparently what it's called in this one. And Revenge, also known as one of the stupidest lores in the game. And Stone, also pretty stupid. Aqua Wake's pretty useful. So Strago. Let's talk about Strago as a character while we're going through this section. I've already mentioned the ex-adventurer thing, and unfortunately Strago doesn't actually get that much in terms of character moments. Again, C-list character. But what he does get makes one point pretty clear about him. He is someone who feels he himself has already gone over the hill and has become comfortable with that fact. He doesn't care about trying to do things anymore, right? Except here's the thing, that's actually the lie. That is the mask. That is Strago's mask. He only wears it like twice in the entire game. Once in the scenes previous, and he's already taken it down from those scenes, by the way. And once at the Fanatic's Tower, which I'll talk about a long time from now. The point is that that is his mask. That is, the mask of indifference, the mask of having retired. That's not Strago. Strago gives a damn. Strago's an adventurer. There's still, he says it in his ending cutscene. There's still strength in this old man, that kind of thing. And so he's, there we go. Oh, God. He cares. He wants to do. He doesn't want to sit around on his ass and just kind of retire and tend to the fields and God knows whatever else he wants. He wants to be out there. He wants to be fighting monsters. He wants to be doing this. This is one of the reasons I enjoy the hidden quest so much in World of Ruin, because it really shows the actual Strago, the man who loves to still be the adventurer and still enjoys the thrill and still enjoys the... Yeah, exactly. He jumps at dealing with that. He finds out about hidden, and he doesn't even hesitate. He's just like, yep, I'm going to do this. Hell to the yeah. Of course he does. Why wouldn't he? I need to put an Esper on him, don't I? We are going to go ahead and make you a mage, so we'll do that. That's also true. I was going to talk about Hidden a little more later in the game, but it is worth noting that Hidden has a strong amount to do with Strago's seeming retirement. His fake retirement, for lack of a better term. Got a little bit of the fixation thing going on. I've often had a theory about that, but again, we'll talk about that when we actually get to Hidden in the world of Run. There we go. Oh, excuse me. Now, so lores. Strago is a blue mage. Blue Magic was actually really new to the Final Fantasy series at this point in time. It was introduced for the very first time in Final Fantasy V, and it was completely broken. Note that I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I love blue mages in FF5, but you cannot deny that they are not just stupidly, ridiculously overpowered. So in this one, they strove to make it a lot weaker, and while lores are still pretty damn strong, overall they are way, way, way less useful than they were in FF5. And they will continue to have some form of blue magic or another from this point on. In FF7 they had the enemy materia, which is actually one of the most powerful materias in the game, especially if you set it up right. In FF8, Quistis had her limit break, which was, that was okay. In FF9, they had, in my opinion, the weakest version of blue magic in the FF series, which is the stuff that Kuena can use. I was thinking about how to pronounce his name. Excuse me, her name. Its name? Yeah. Kuena's name. But Kuena's thing is just really, really irritating to do. So they nerfed it in several ways. First of all, it's harder for Strago to learn blue magic than it was for a blue mage to learn it back in FF5. Slightly more stringent requirements. Second of all, blue magic spells cost an insane amount of mana. I'm trying to think. Can I find? Okay, here we go. So Bio, which is a pretty strong non-elemental attack, is 26 mana, right? Aqua Rake, which is an AoE Watchfig attack, costs 22. And most of his spells will cost a huge amount. Grand Train, which is his best actual spell, costs a ton of mana to cast. So Strago is usually one of my premier people who ends up getting a gold hairpin or an economizer, just so he can actually use his lores, because they cost a ton of mana. Yes, Gao does count as a version of a blue mage in my opinion, absolutely. Realm does not, even though there's some wiggle room on that one. Oh. Realm is actually a Beastmaster, if you want to get down to it, from using the FF5 equivalent. Anyways, so blue magic. Blue magic is awesome. You learn the spell from the enemies and you get to use it yourself. As with everything else in FF6, only a few of the spells are really worth getting. So unless you're going for a 100% run, usually people like me only bother to get like 3, I want to say, of them. There's a blue rage. You're terrible, little Billy. Let's see. There's Aqua Rush, or whatever the second level water spell is. That's pretty useful. You get that from the Blue Dragon. Very easy to get. Grand Train, of course, which is one of the best spells in the game. In fact, it could be argued it is the 3rd best spell in the game. 4th, depending on how you set that up. Because it's for those of you who don't know, Grand Train is a resistance piercing attack. So even though it doesn't have the magic power of certain stronger attacks, it does a ton of damage because it completely pierces their magic protection. It's one of the reasons why Ultima is technically the strongest spell in the game, even though there's actually one other spell that has more attack power, or excuse me, magic power than Ultima. But that other spell, which is Goner, it's the thing Kefka uses, doesn't pierce magic defense. And then, so we got Grand Train, we got Aqua Rush, or Aqua, whatever it's called, the second one. Clean Sweep, that's what it's called, Clean Sweep. And there is, what's it called? There's one that buffs the entire party. It's the equivalent of Big Guard, Maybe it actually is called Big Guard, but either way, that's an extremely useful one for him to learn. And honestly, that's usually all I bother to go out of my way in a normal playthrough to get for Strago. If I'm doing a speedrun, I don't get any of those. It's not worth it. Strago takes too much time to set up otherwise. Yeah, I don't know, okay. You're a goner, okay? I don't know, dude. I do think that one of the things I like about the very concept of blue magic, and always have, is the variety it adds to it. You can have basically non-standard spells in this kind of thing. I mean, he has a spell that kills himself to heal the entire party. Oh yeah, White Wind, that's another one worth getting. He has a spell that heals the entire party based on his health, so completely bypassing levels and whatnot. He has an ability, hey Branian, he has a blue magic spell that allows him to possibly instantly death someone. He has a blue magic spell that allows him to instantly death someone randomly. He can basically bypass the standard magic rules of the standard spells you can learn from Espers in order to do cool effects and whatnot. So I like blue magic. I like the lore system. There is one thing I don't like about the lore system. Some of the really cool lores you literally cannot get until Kefka's Tower. This is a problem I've talked about many, many, many times in the past, and that problem is thus. Any game that does not have New Game Plus, for me, this is my opinion, it feels purposeless to get some of the endgame stuff. FF7 is my actual favorite example of that. Most of the actual best materia in the game and the best equipment in the game you get in the Northern Crater. You get it as you're going down that damn place. And that's the last dungeon of the game. And that's true in FF6 as well. It's true in FF5, it's true in FF4. When you remove New Game Plus, it feels like you get that just for the last boss, and it's like, yeah, I got this awesome thing, and I don't get to enjoy it. I don't get to use it. This is why I like New Game Plus, because in other words, you have now gotten this item, you have earned it, and now you can go enjoy it, right? Oh God, really, Branian? You too, I swear. So yeah, I really wish, like for example, you get Force Field, I want to say, in Kefka's Tower, which has a few fun effects as far as the lore. I don't even remember exactly what it does off the top of my head because I almost never get it because you only get it in the frickin' final dungeon. And there's a few other lores you get pretty much at the end game or in Kefka's Tower. In fact, there is a single enemy in Kefka's Tower, I forget what it's called, it's one of the samurai-looking guys, who randomly can cast basically every lore in the entire game, and so you can learn no matter what you want off of him if you choose to, with enough time and patience and RNG. And you are right, Night Dawn, but the point is, you get to enjoy it. It's about satisfaction. It's not about being overpowered. It's not about running through the game at level 90. That's not the fun. The fun is, I earned this and now I get to enjoy it, as opposed to, I earned this and now the game's over. Do you see my perspective on that? Now again, I'm not saying my perspective is the only one, or the right one, or anything like that, but that's how I think of it as. In FF7, and when I replay most of these games, I almost never bother to get the endgame stuff, because I don't see a point in it. See you night, Varanian. You have a good night. Not too much fun, though. I don't see a point in it. It seems so purposeless. I only do it when I'm doing a 100% run. It's just like, yep, I could get that thing, but I don't need it. I don't want it, and I'm only going to get to use it for like 3 battles, so what's the point? That's my perspective on it. And again, just the way I think of it. So that's why lore is a plus. We're going to go and give that a game plus. Definitely. That is definitely a gameplay plus for me. The negative isn't really a negative. The absence of New Game Plus isn't really a negative. And yeah, Kingdom Hearts is another good example. Yeah. Whoop, I have a phone call. Hang on, let me answer my phone here. Hello.